guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new Justnohoa HOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first one is titled, Homeowner Association Threatened a Farmer. I live in a rural area, on a family farm. The farm next to ours was sold to a developer, who built a bunch of mini mansions, that have an homeowner association. Now the mini mansions back up to my family farm. I get letters every week from the homeowner association complaining about the tractor sitting in the field at the front of my property, where it can seen from the street. We're working that field and the tractor is necessary. I've had them complain about my barns, outbuildings, the sound of the large tractor when I'm seeding, and once have my grandfather saw some people he didn't recognize checking out the barn, went out with his double-barrel 12 to see what they up to. They were homeowner association inspectors, who declared their right to inspect the building to make sure it met homeowner association rules. My grandfather is not politically correct and I was pleased he restrained himself from using buckshot to register his opinion. Trespassers. And yes, our property is fenced and posted. I was informed by the homeowner association that they were going to fine me $1,000 a day until the offending striations and machinery were removed. I informed them that I and my property are not part of the homeowner association, and if their inspectors set foot on my property again, I would have them arrested or let my grandfather loose with his double barrel. They went nuts and called the county sheriff's office. Having lived here for generations, I know the sheriff. He came out and asked me what was going on and I told him. He also visited the homeowner association and heard their demands that he take immediate action to protect their inspectors. They were less than happy when he informed them that since my property is posted and fenced, I was well within my rights to not allow them on my land. Also, because of our livestock, a 12 is not unreasonable because of predators. He also informed them that as I am not a member of the homeowner association, I have no requirement to allow them on my land, and if he gets another call he will arrest the inspectors for criminal trespass. I have since been sent a letter from the homeowner association's lawyer telling to cease and desist all operations until they get the court date because they are suing me for damaging the value of their property. I forwarded it to my lawyer who, after he got done laughing, was amazed. First, because a court has to issue a cease and desist order, and secondly, we've been here farming for 4 generations. I have spoken with the homeowner association board and told them to leave us alone or we'll be more than happy to play our lawyer is better than their lawyer. I was informed that the developer of their property assured them I'd be selling my land for development to an organization like his, that has since resolved into the ether. They were more than a little surprised when I told them that we're currently training the 5th generation to take over and we have no intention of selling our farm, period. Seems the developer left them with impression that I was selling my property to be developed like my neighbors had been, only to make his money and run. God have mercy on overzealous homeowner associations. The next one is titled, Never Annoy a Rich Redneck. This is a story about my grandparents' friend. I was a young teen, but given the outcome, this story has stuck with me. I've sat on this story for a while, but it's so satisfying to see a gaggle of Karens taken down a notch that I figured I'd share. For the sake of this story, we will call my grandparents' friend William. Now, my grandparents knew William from way back. My grandmother knew him from school and my grandfather met him after marrying my grandmother. Anyways, in the 60s Grandma was a manager at the 711. William led a crew that went there every day. It was the only gas station in a 30-minute radius, so everyone knew everyone in that sleepy coastal town kind of way. Now, one day William was doing a job down on the waterfront and slipped, fell, and broke his back. While he was healing from the operation and was broke as a joke, my grandma would always make sure send him something to eat that she'd pay for when the crew would come in to grab their snacks and gas up, knowing William would simply skip the meal to save the money for his own family. My grandpa also took him to several doctor apps since William couldn't drive for a while and his tiny little wife couldn't wrangle him into a car by herself. William never forgot that. 20 years later, when he sold off his now very successful business and was a millionaire about 20 times over, he promptly told 90% of the world to go to hell but kept those that had always been there for him close. Meanwhile, he never moved from the house that he'd had since before he was rich. His only concessions to his wealth were trips with his wife to see the world and buying up quite a few acres of the forested land around him. If you weren't his friend, you'd take him for every other blue-collar worker in the town. There was absolutely nothing obvious to show that he was worth tens of millions of dollars. After his wife died in the 90s, William decided to take up a new hobby. As he lived outside of the city limits, he set up a sawmill and woodworking shop, got all the proper permits and everything. The saws were in a big old enclosed building in the middle of all that land, so in all honesty, so no harm no foul, right? Wrong. The family that owned the forest behind William's land had just sold it to developers. Thus, the new luxury gated neighborhood, the first in the area, was born. Enter a plethora of Chads and Karens who were mostly from up north and had moved down south to take advantage of the better weather and the nearby beach. It didn't take long before they decided to take offense to his little business venture on the other side of the 10-foot-tall wall of their neighborhood because it didn't fit with the image of their community. You know, the community he was decidedly not a part of. So, they sued him. Didn't even try to start a dialogue with him, just up and sued him. William was livid. He was your typical coastal redneck, and he would be damned if those damn Yankees told him what to do on his own property that was not within city limits nor located in an homeowner association. William countered with professional noise studies that showed that some of the kids in that neighborhood drove vehicles that made more ambient noise than his little operation. Nope, the people in the neighborhood simply threw more money at the lawyers to continue on with the lawsuit. Essentially, their plan was to bleed him dry. Their lawyers, who were not locals, actually told William's lawyer that he should probably advise his client to close the shop so that he wouldn't end up bankrupt due to the resources being thrown at him from the homeowners. Due to the relatively modest surroundings of his home, the neighbors nor their lawyers had any idea the man was actually richer than just about all of them put together. All they saw was an older dude who drove a beat-up 80s model truck and wore Dickies jeans and work shirts that lived in what appeared to be a relatively modest home, especially compared to their McMansions. When William's lawyer told him about that conversation, William lost his ducking mind. I clearly remember his screeching into my parents' driveway in that old work truck, cussing up a storm and ranting and raving before he even got in the house. He came to our house, why? Because my grandmother, bless her heart, was known as one of the most giving people in the world, unless you pissed her off. If you hurt her or someone she cared for, she became one of the most vindictive buttholes that could be found in that town. I am not kidding when I say that her ability for revenge served cold was legendary amongst the locals. So William had come to the house for a dose of her deviousness. Us kids weren't allowed inside during that conversation, but after he left that day, I later heard the adults talking about how he proceeded to hire quite a few private investigators to see if there would be any dirt to dig up on them. By them, I mean the dozens of people in that neighborhood that were a part of that lawsuit. Lo and behold, there was apparently copious amounts of dirt to be had. I still remember him positively crowing about it to my grandparents one fine summer day months later. That 60-something-year-old man was as gleeful as the proverbial kid on Christmas morning. Why? Because after he learned what his little private army dug up, he started making some phone calls to various acquaintances in high places. The ensuing fallout meant that the lawsuit was dropped. There was quite a list of misdeeds that were discovered, but the ones that I heard talked about by the adults that stick out are: there were more than a handful of individuals that owed back child support. William very helpfully had the private investigators provide the mother's updated address and employment information so that they could pursue said child support garnishment if they wanted to. On top of that, the IRS became very interested in several of those people as well as various other neighbors. Finally, one household ended up in prison because the investigators realized that they were drug dealers. The pictures of the transactions caught by the pies were helpfully handed over to the sheriff's department. Drugs are bad, kids. Moral of the story: never piss off a rich redneck. The next one is titled, I Fought the Homeowner Association and I Won. I own a condo in a small building. There are 2 apartments in the basement, 6 on the first floor including mine and 4 on the top floor. A few months ago I came home from vacation to find a substantial leak in my ceiling. It wasn't exactly pouring out, but it was dripping enough that I needed to put a couple of buckets underneath. I went to the apartment upstairs and talked to the guy who lives there, and neither one of us could figure out what might be causing it. There was no obvious issue that we could find. It was fairly late at night on a Sunday, so the next morning I called my condo association to let them know what was going on. They sent a maintenance guy over, who came into my apartment to see where the leak was, then went upstairs to check the other apartment. He pretty quickly came back, and said that the issue was either a loose connection or a broken pipe behind the wall where it connects to the shower head in the apartment upstairs. It seemed as though the water had been pooling for some time before it came through my ceiling, and the ceiling and inside of the wall were both pretty wet. They were able to cut off the water to that pipe to stop the dripping, and the owner upstairs got a plumber over to fix it. I filed an insurance claim for the damage to my ceiling wall, and I figured that was the end of dealing with my homeowner association. However, I was wrong. A couple weeks later I received a bill for $140 for plumbing repairs from my association. To me this did not make any sense, since there were no repairs done to my apartment, and the association didn't even make the repairs to the apartment where the actual issue was. It was a private company. I was told by my association that since I had called, and the issue was determined to be not in a common area, I was responsible for paying. They hadn't even charged the owner of the unit where the issue actually was. They told me that once the maintenance guy entered my apartment, it would mean I was charged unless it was determined to be an issue in a common area. This resulted in several weeks of emails back and forth, ultimately with me refusing to pay the bill until they showed me in the bylaws where I would be charged for this, and also informing them that their bylaws in fact say that something like this is covered by common charges, i.e. our monthly fee. They eventually stopped responding to me, and I looked at my statement today to see the charge has finally been taken off my account. I know it's not a ton of money, but it's nice to be vindicated a bit on something like this. The next one is titled, Dad Got Decade-Long Revenge on My Auntie. A little setup. My dad is one of 9 children to my grandparents. When the oldest sister, my auntie, let's call her Margaret, got married, one of the gifts she received was 4 very poorly made clay pots from one of her friends who wasn't super close to the family. They were all very different to each other and didn't match at all. I assume they came out of a first-timers pottery class or something. Anyway, fast forward 15 years and my parents are getting married. Margaret shows up at the wedding. As does everyone else. The ceremony and reception pass with no dramas and everyone goes home. The following week my parents begin to sort through all their wedding gifts. Unwrap Margaret's to find a very old worn-looking cardboard box with the old tape still underneath the new tape put on there by Margaret to hold the lid closed. Dad opens the box to see the 4 pots that had been given to Margaret 15 years prior. My parents knew this was a gift to Margaret originally because at the bottom of the box was a cord of congratulations on your wedding, addressed to Margaret. She hadn't even bothered to take the pots out of the box when she was gifted them or checked the condition when rewrapping them. This thoroughly pissed off my dad. Then his anger turned to determination as he started to develop a plan that would stretch almost a decade. With Christmas fast approaching, my dad rewrapped the pots in the same box with the same wedding card addressed to Margaret. Essentially in the same condition he had received it in. He then wrote another card addressed to another of his siblings explaining his plan. He gave the present to the youngest of his siblings. The newer card explained that she was to hold on to the pots until the next Christmas, making sure to unwrap it and make sure that everyone could see the pots in one way or another. The card then explained to leave the wedding card in the box and to not let anyone see it. My auntie would then hold on to the box, pots and card until next Christmas. She would then gift them and my dad's note to the next sibling above her in age, my uncle. This cycle would repeat another 8 times until it reached the oldest sibling, Margaret. In my dad's letter, it instructed the last sibling before Margaret to not give her the letter written by him regarding the plan. 9 years after giving the gift away, my dad and all his siblings watched as she pulled out the pots that she had seen being passed around from sister to brother to sister for the last decade. She then noticed the note still in the box. She opened it and a Category 4.2 earthquake was registered as her jaw hit the floor. Now, most people would expect her to erupt in rage, but Australians have some of the best senses of humor on the planet. The family all had a good chuckle about it and moved on to Christmas lunch. The pots are now separated. One going to my dad, Margaret, my grandparents, and the last being the trophy of the annual cricket game. It was sadly destroyed by a rouge ball in that very same yearly tournament and is now only half a trophy. Hope you enjoyed. The next one is titled, Do Not Reopen Negotiations When a Deal is Already Too Good. Years ago I was moving cross-country and was selling large or heavy items I didn't want to move. I listed stuff on Craigslist at fire sale prices. I guessed at what I thought each item would normally move for and priced it at 25 to 50% just to make the process quick. I wanted everything gone by nightfall. Most items went smooth and quick, but as you might imagine, some people are gonna try to take advantage of this situation. I put up a 300-pound weight set with a stand, Olympic bar and curl bar for $50. I got an insane amount of calls even after taking the ad down and immediately knew I had priced too low. The later callers offered much more than $50 to sell to them instead. I told him I would abide by the first caller's deal as long as first caller does. First caller shows up and tries to immediately load the items. Nah man, money first then I will help you load. He pauses and says, I only have $45, can you do it for that? It is pretty obvious he wanted to pull this after it was loaded so he could save $5. After a day of dealing with Craigslist people, I was in no mood for these shenanigans. I explained to him the amount of phone calls and I have a standing offer of $150 small embellishment and I was planning to do the $50 if he came correct. Since he reopened negotiations, we no longer have a deal and he would now have to beat the $150 offer. He thinks and offers $151, to which I reply that bid increments are $5 and he needs $155 and he needs the cash now because the other offer is ready to go. Wouldn't you know it? He pulls out $155 that he had on him the whole time. I take the money and sit on my couch and turn on the TV. He says, I thought you were gonna help me load. I replied, that is part of the first deal. Our renegotiation didn't include any help. He huffed and puffed but started loading, huffing and puffing more with each trip. I did end up moving the weights just outside my front door so I could get him out of my sight. The next one is titled, Dogs Won't Stop Barking, Meet My Leaf Blower. So the neighbor behind me has 3 dogs. For 3 years I've been listening to them bark, driving me nuts in the summer. Now I get that dogs bark and play, blah blah. I'm talking about at night constant barking here. Each fall he sets up a big screen for a couple's night and they all have their own little bonfire kettle and snuggle under blankets and watch a movie. I think it's nice. The movie is usually loud, but it's once a year and they are always done by 10:30. No big deal. On this particular night they are all cuddled up watching away. I'm in my basement and can hear the dogs barking over the movie. I started fuming again. Pissed off I walked outside, went to the fence screaming at him asking if he can hear his damn dogs over the movie. I stayed away from the fence cause this guy is huge and no doubt could kick my ass. He dared me to come to the fence line and say it to his face. Needless to say words were exchanged. I had just gotten done cleaning up my yard that day, so I grabbed my leaf blower and a roll of tape. Started that baby up, taped the trigger down and went back inside. 5 minutes later there's a knock at the door. It's the cops. He called the cops on me. They wanted to ticket me for making nuisance noise if I wouldn't shut it off. I told them it's a tool and that I had till 10 p.m. to run it. While explaining the situation to them, the blower ran out of gas and they said they were glad the situation was over. But not for me, I was really pissed. When I went back to get the blower I grabbed my chainsaw and the tape. He saw me and was equally pissed as I ruined the movie for like 4 couples and him. More words were exchanged, much more harsh than before but I didn't care. The chainsaw gas needed to be emptied for the winter. I can only imagine his thoughts when he heard the first couple pulls on the saw. This was a couple years ago. I haven't spoken with him, or heard his dogs bark at night either. This is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave some star emojis in the comments. See you tomorrow.